I'd like to thank you all for coming, and thank you to CAST for hosting me. As Amy said, I'm a collections assistant working at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, working on the WS Ranch Archaeological Collection. And tonight I'd like to tell you the story of this collection, how it came to Denver, what we're learning from it, and why this collection is important in the context of Southwest archaeology and beyond. So what is the WS Ranch site? The WS Ranch site is a large Upland Mogollon Pueblo located about a mile north of the town of Alma, New Mexico, near the Arizona-New Mexico border. It was occupied from 800 to 1300 CE during the late Pit House, Classic Mimbris, and Tularosa phase periods. From 1800 to about 1150, the WS Ranch site represents the northernmost expression of the Classic Mimbris culture. At around 1150, Classic Mimbris was replaced by the Tularosa phase material from the north and east. The WS Ranch Archaeological Project also included excavations at other ancient Upland Mogollon sites, including Apache Creek Pueblo, the Eva Faust site, WS Ranch Site 5, WS Ranch Site 17, and many others. The main features at the multiplicity of sites that make up the WS Ranch Archaeological Projects are middens, room blocks, and kivas. Taken together, all of that excavation and all of that survey led to the recovery and collection of approximately 500,000 objects, which are whole and reconstructible pottery vessels, sherds, stone tools, lithic debitage, bone tools, faunal remains, and other archaeological materials, including ornaments and exotic raw materials. This juxtaposition of the northernmost Classic Mimbris and southernmost Tularosa phase material makes the WS Ranch site unique in Southwest archaeology. And the WS Ranch Archaeological Project collection is an important assemblage for the study of Southwestern culture, history, dynamics, and processes. So just to give you a visual of what the site looks like, this is a map of the main WS Ranch site, so none of those other auxiliary sites that I mentioned, while excavations were ongoing. So here you can see some room block features, the main midden feature, and the Great Kiva. And here's what the site looks like now, with a more comprehensive site map overlaid to it. There are several room blocks and middens, 2 kivas, and this map only includes the main WS Ranch site. As you can see, there's a dotted line running through the site demarcating a national forest boundary. The majority of the site is on private ranch land, but some of the site overlaps the Gila National Forest. And that drone shot with the map overlay was courtesy of one of our curators, Dr. Aaron Baxter. So no bulldozers or archaeologists were harmed in the taking of that photo. Before drones, we had to get real creative. And this is an original photo from the site. She never told us that talented. Yeah, yes. So what was it like excavating at the WS Ranch site in its heyday? The WS Ranch Archaeological Project was one of the last large-scale archaeological field schools in the American Southwest, occurring over the course of 11 field seasons between 1977 and 1994. The primary investigator at the site was Dr. James Neely out of the University of Texas at Austin, and hundreds of field school students, volunteers, and professional archaeologists participated, excavating rooms, structures, and features, processing artifacts in the field, and recording data about the sites and objects found there. In the archives related to the WS Ranch project, we find documentation of these on-site activities. Here on the left, you can see one of the graduate students who participated in the project washing pottery sherds in a story written up in a New Mexico newspaper. On the right is an example of field notes a student took in 1978. This particular page discusses the excavation progress on room blocks B and A and midden B. Once all of the archaeological material was excavated over the course of 11 years, it was shipped back to the University of Texas at Austin, where Dr. James Neely taught. There, it came under the care of the University of Texas at Austin's Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory, with its a mouthful. So I'll be referring to it as TARL from here forward. So these 2 photographs are from the inside of the preservation facilities at the University of Texas. The facilities themselves don't have temperature and humidity control, and most of the collection was still housed in the original brown paper excavation bags and cardboard boxes that they were shipped to Texas in. Time, as you would imagine, is not kind to brown paper and cardboard, especially in a non-climate controlled facility. So the bags and boxes deteriorated in these conditions. This deterioration caused the collection to be exposed to pests, dust, dirt, and other pollutants that have collected on and around the artifacts for decades. Additionally, WS Ranch Archaeological Project personnel never completed comprehensive site reports for any of the excavated sites. The vast majority of the very sporadic analyses completed on the collection occurred as undergraduate research papers or unfinished graduate theses that are not publication quality. Put simply, the collection has not been physically or intellectually cared for in the ways that it needed to be, beginning from when it was shipped from New Mexico to Texas. Now, I don't share this with you to disparage my colleagues at the University of Texas in the slightest. These conditions are the reality, unfortunately, in many museums and cultural heritage institutions. So collection staff must make do the best they can with the resources and space that they have. Also, TARL's stated mission is to preserve archaeological collections from the state of Texas. And the WS Ranch collection is from New Mexico, which means it falls outside of TARL's long-term mandate, so it was understandably not a priority for them. However, staff at both the University of Texas and DMNS recognize that this collection needs better housing and better intellectual and physical organization. This led to the writing of a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to bring the collection to Denver to be processed and rehoused. So why DMNS, you might ask? In addition to DMNS's larger capacity for physically processing and storing a collection of this size, the museum also has archaeologists on staff who are actively engaged in research on Upland Mogollon sites in West Central New Mexico. I'm sure you all know Dr. Aaron Bachelor is one of them. And the collection would be housed with other material from the Southwest that would help to contextualize it. And there are experts on staff who can readily engage in research on and with the collection. So in September 2021, a team of 4 collection staff from DMNS traveled to Austin for 2 weeks to pack the collection. Remember, there are 500,000 objects in this collection. Over the course of 6 days, working in the warehouse in temperatures as high as 90 degrees Fahrenheit, DMNS staff pre-built boxes, transferred bags and vials to the new boxes, labeled and weighed each box, staged the boxes in stacks, and then loaded them onto pallets. The pallets were then loaded onto a negative 20 degrees Celsius freezer truck for 2 weeks to kill any potential pest infestations. And then finally, the collection was loaded onto 2 dedicated trucks direct to Denver and arrived on October 11th, 2021. So this is what the collection looked like when it arrived at the museum, all 560 boxes worth. So let's open a few and see what we have inside, shall we? So the WS Ranch collection has everything one would expect to find in a village that was occupied for about 500 years. While going through the collections, staff and volunteers have seen pieces of pottery, stone tools of many kinds, animal bones, bone tools, plant remains, jewelry like pendants and beads, and raw materials like pigments and minerals used for dyeing. The main goal of the project is to put the objects into special packaging called housing in museum collections to archive quality materials better suited for long-term preservation into the future. As mentioned previously, this collection contains a wide variety of materials, so staff must take that into consideration when deciding how to house the collection. The kind of housing that is best for one type of object might not be appropriate for another. For example, a piece of pottery the size of a quarter can be put into a small plastic bag, like the one you see on the screen, and stored into a box with objects of a similar size from the same area of the site, which is right here. Everything's organized by locality in our cabinets. Whereas a piece of groundstone would be too large and heavy for a plastic bag. In the case of objects like the groundstone, collection staff make custom boxes called mounts that fit the object's dimensions exactly and encase it safely in archive quality foam. Once they're properly housed, the objects in their boxes and mounts are stored in the Avenir Collection Center at DMNS. But preserving the physical object is only half of the process. During archaeological excavations, participants recorded data about the objects when they came out of the ground. This data can include GPS coordinates, how deep in the ground the object was buried, what kind of soil the object was found in, and other important details. If this data isn't preserved along with the object, it becomes difficult or even impossible for researchers to learn more about life at WS Ranch. To avoid this, we record all of the information associated with the individual objects in our collections database. Once this information is stored in the database, it becomes far more accessible to researchers and collection staff who will use it in the future to ask and answer new questions. Part of ethical and responsible collection stewardship is also engaging with descendant communities and collaboratively seeking the repatriation of Native American ancestors and belongings that fall under NAGPRA, or the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. For those unfamiliar, NAGPRA is a human rights law enacted in 1990 that returns Native American human remains and funerary objects to their native nations. Once legal control of the collection was transferred to DM&S, we sought to address the disposition of the Native American ancestors and belongings in the WS Ranch collection as soon as possible. After successful consultation with several Puebloan tribes, the Pueblo of Acoma agreed to take the lead on repatriation and reburial efforts. At this time, DM&S has repatriated 45 ancestors and 30 associated burial objects from the WS Ranch site to descendant communities. However, the NAGPRA work with this collection continues because additional ancestral remains that were scattered across the site by natural and human processes have been found in the collection as it is being processed. These ancestors too will be separated, repatriated, and reburied with the other ancestors who lived at WS Ranch. So as we're going through it, what are we learning from this collection? Some exciting data has come to light over the course of the project so far. An assortment of the ethnobotanical samples have been analyzed to determine which species are represented in the collection. The results show evidence of plants that might be familiar to those of us living in the Southwest, such as yucca, juniper, and pinyon pine. Maize appeared as cobs and seeds, indicative of intensive corn production. We're also analyzing the shell in the collection. We're lucky to have one of our assistant collections managers is an expert on shell jewelry in the Southwest. So she is doing that for us. And while the shell analysis has just begun, several studies of other Mogollon sites have been conducted with likely the same conclusions. The Hohokam, or people who resided in southern Arizona at the same time, were likely trading shell with the Mogollon. The Hohokam were known for their shell products with common forms, including bracelets, disc beads, and pendants. While the WS Ranch shell has been rehoused and found in a variety of contexts, the analyzed shell data is similar to that found in other Mogollon sites. Bracelet fragments are the most common, with some reworked, likely into a pendant like shown above right here. As analysis continues, the context of these objects will reveal possibly the intentional use of shell and ritual-like behavior. This would include placing fragments within the roof of a kiva, behind plastered walls of pit houses, below floors, or in post holes. So stay tuned to see what we find. Looking into the future, once the collection is fully processed and documented, we would like to begin researching the collection in three main ways. First, we'd like to replicate the analyses that had already been done on the collection in the past, like carbon dating and obsidian hydration analysis, to ensure the accuracy of the data that we already have. Concurrently, we'd also like to conduct collection-wide surveys of standard material types like ceramics, lithics, faunal remains, groundstone, and more, just to see what we have from an archaeological standpoint. And once this data has been collected, we can begin to ask site-specific questions of that data as it emerged from these analyses. For example, a question that has been formulating among staff is regarding obsidian sourcing at WS Ranch. So obsidian was a popular and useful type of stone for making tools like projectile points, and the WS Ranch contains significant amounts. Obsidian can also tell us where exactly it originated. So obsidian is volcanic glass found in areas called sources, often places where volcanoes have erupted, and each source has a unique chemical signature. By using X-ray fluorescence, we can match an artifact found at WS Ranch to a known obsidian source, like those on the map shown on the slide here. And this can tell us how far people traveled or not to gather and trade obsidian. The data we have from previous tests run by WS Ranch project staff at Tarl indicates that WS Ranch obsidian came from two main sources. WS Ranch here is represented by the red star on the screen. And the first source is Mule Creek down near the bottom, and the second source is Gwin Canyon, both very close to the WS Ranch Pueblo, as you could see. So based on the current data we have, folks at WS Ranch weren't traveling very far to get their obsidian, But redoing this analysis and then broadening our sample size might yield different or new results, which is why it's important to revisit that old data. So all of that having been said, why does this collection matter? Why are we undertaking this massive project to rehouse 500,000 objects and record their associated data? And I see three main answers to these questions. The first is that the collection has not been properly cared for since it was excavated, and it's not the only collection like this in the world by a long shot. By caring for archaeological material we already have, we make research opportunities available without needing to excavate. The fieldwork here has already been done, and the objects still have stories to tell, but they can't tell them when the site data goes unrecorded and undocumented. Second, as stewards of this collection, we have the ethical responsibility to catalog it so ancestors and belongings can be returned home to Indigenous descendant communities, and that can't be accomplished without a reliable and thorough inventory of the collection. Third and finally, the WS Ranch site itself is unique and has a massive amount of research potential. The period in which people lived at WS Ranch was a dynamic and important time in Southwest history. Complex and interesting social and technological advancements took place to the north of WS Ranch in places like Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde National Park, to the west in Phoenix and Tucson basins of Arizona, and to the south at Casas Grandes and other sites in Chihuahua, Mexico. The WS Ranch site is near the center of these dynamic events geographically, but was on the outskirts of the main political, social, and religious movements in those areas. This collection then can document human adaptation to the mountainous regions of the Southwest, while helping provide insights into broader cultural processes found across the entire Southwest. So that is it for me. Thank you very much. And this art is actually found in the archives that was done by one of the students who excavated at WS Ranch. So this little guy has kind of become, exactly. We're gonna make t-shirts. He's our little mascot. And then I also have a thank you slide to all of the incredible people that have helped this project go along. And so if you're interested at all in working on this collection, we are still taking volunteers, particularly people who like to do data entry. So sitting at a computer, typing archaeological data into a spreadsheet. And unfortunately, I don't have my contact info on a slide, but I can provide it to you, Stacy, so you can send it out in an email. I would love your help. We would love your help if you're interested. But thank you all for your time, and I appreciate you having me here. Yay. So, questions? Yes.
This started, your work on this, with it being moved to Denver, started in October of 2021. Is that about what I remember you said?
Yeah, so the question is whether the work itself started in October of 2021. And the answer to that is no, actually. The collection itself came to the museum at that time. Work started in earnest on it in January of 2022 by someone else who was not me. And then that person got a different job and left. So I came onto the project in July of 2022. And I've been working on it ever since.
What's the anticipated time frame?
So the question is what the anticipated time frame is. My time is up based on the time frame and money written into our grant. My hard stop end date is September 30th of this year. Yes.
How far are you through the
yeah, a good way through. I'd say at this point we're about halfway to 3/4. So
do you have a normal team of what's your normal volunteer team?
So this list up here is everyone who has ever volunteered on the project. Right now, I think I have 15 volunteers. Yeah. So we have a pretty large volunteer core working on this project, and truly they're the ones who are doing the legwork and getting their hands dirty with the collection. So yeah, could not do it without them.
It sounded as though, if I remember correctly, that you indicated that after you have reanalyzed things to see that things are relatively accurate and such, that there may be some research questions at the end of that analysis.
Yeah, so the question was, after double checking the analysis that has already been done, whether there's room for new research questions to be asked. And I would say to that, absolutely. We are, I say we, the DMNS Anthropology Department is really looking forward to being able to welcome researchers to the collection to take a look at this. Because I myself don't have a background in Southwest archaeology. My expertise is caring for museum collections. But through my archaeology background broadly, just going through this collection on the day-to-day, I get really, really excited to thinking about what folks are going to come in with the real expertise to see about this site and the people that were living there. So yes, long story longer. Absolutely. Yes.
In association with that, how is DMNS going to outreach to make it known that this material will be available? I'm sure that, you know, a number of graduate students would be interested in
Absolutely.
getting in on this and things like that. Does DMNS have a plan on how they're going to outreach to the academic community to get researchers in?
Yeah, the question is about outreach and how DMNS is planning on getting researchers in the building. And yes, that's actually we've written that into our grant. Part of that is presenting at conferences. I'm slated to present, at the PECOS conference this summer. We also do community outreach events to educate the public on what's going on behind the scenes. So that's not necessarily the academic community, as you asked. But we're also planning on possibly writing a Sapiens article. There's also a article in the Museum Members magazine that's in the works. So we have a lot of outreach coming down the pike to get the word out to the right people that this collection exists. And we've already had a research request for 2 on the collection, and it's still being processed. So people are, the academic community, I get the sense that they're very excited about getting into this collection. Yeah. Yes.
So what's the plan for the final disposition of these artifacts, both in terms of like the maybe NAGPR portion of the
Yes.
collection? More rapid.
Sure. So the question is about the final disposition of the objects in the collection, whether they're NAGPR related or they're part of the main collection. And most of the collection is going to be, the final disposition is going to be DMNS. So the collection's storage there. The objects that are going to be repatriated are ultimately going to be reburied. I'm not sure if a site has been picked out for that yet, but yeah, we've been working with the Forest Service, so it's going to be on National Forest land close to the WS Ranch area broadly.
We're just checking with those online
Oh.
if you have any questions.
Yeah, Zoom questions.
And how has the relationship been with the Pueblos in going through this material and getting it back home? So to
Sure.
speak?
The question was about relationships with the Pueblo folks in relationship to processing the collection and getting it back home. I wasn't hired on yet when the initial consultation took place. That was back in 2018. But the museum has a really strong working relationship with Pueblo groups because so much of our material comes from their community. So we've worked with them a lot. So this was sort of par for the course as far as NAGPR consultations go, where they're very used to working together. So things have been going well. And in that original consultation, the tribal representatives did acknowledge that there was the potential for more ancestors to be found and more objects to be found. So they were pretty much right on the money with that. So they're aware that we're finding more ancestors, and we're going to have to do a second reburial.
That's probably from experience.
Yes, yes, yeah, from the museum side and from the tribal side for sure. Yeah, so we're in active communication with them during the
Since
process.
you have been in with the material intimately, can you talk about percentages of what the materials,
Good
and what some
question.
of your favorite things are?
Oh, yes. So the question was about what percentages of the collection is what types of material, and what some of my favorites are. I would say that probably almost a third of the collection is lithics. Another third is probably pottery. And then the rest of the material types that I mentioned in my presentation make up the other third. But some of my favorites, the shell material has really grown on me because of what I've been learning from the assistant collections manager who did her master's thesis on shell jewelry in the Southwest. She's been able to teach me a lot, and I've been able to look at it with new eyes. There's also a cave, objects from a cave context. It's not in the main WS Ranch site. It's one of the more peripheral sites that they excavated later in the project. But there's some really incredibly preserved wood objects coming out of that cave. So arrow shafts, there's the sort of bottom portion of a bow. So it looked like it was somebody's hunting cache that they just either left there or, whatever have you. And I'm kicking myself. I should have took photos of those objects for my presentation, but those got us really excited when we pulled them out of the bags, and looking forward to learning more about them.
Was there a fair amount of good? I'm like a textile person.
Sure.
So I was wondering about like fibers, plant fibers, things like
Mm.
that. What kind of preservation quality do they seem to be?
Yeah.
Material?
The question was about plant fibers and what the preservation on those were like. I think the main botanical samples that we've been finding is unprocessed, natural, like very small pieces of plants. There is a strand of yucca, I believe, that was found in that same cave context that I mentioned earlier. No textiles at all, to my knowledge. There might have been some that have been since reburied that were from a burial context that I hadn't seen. But yeah, not a ton of processed plant fibers, but there's certainly an abundance of stuff that's coming up, like in the flotation process and things like that. So
Looks like there's a
couple Zoom questions. Can you tell us anything about the Great Kiva at the site? With my limited knowledge of Southwest archaeology, I can do my best. But one thing that I learned about the Great Kiva at the site that surprised me was kivas, in my mind, had always been these circular features, right? The really famous ones down at Chaco and things like that. But the Great Kiva at the site is rectangular, which apparently is a feature of or a reflection of the time period. So it's fairly diagnostic that it's a square. That's the big thing. I'm so sorry, I don't have more details. But yes, and most of the shell that I showed on screen is also from the Great Kiva. So yeah, I think that'll be a hotspot for researchers, and I'm looking forward to see what they come up with.
Okay, that was from Jean. That question was from Jean Wheaton, who has an interest in a number of sites here in Colorado.
Yeah.
And is also on a board, so I'm sure he's going to be getting hold of you.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
And also too, I see.
Oh,
questions from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Dad. What did you find to be the biggest challenge with the process so far? Hi. So I think from a purely logistics standpoint, because that's where my brain lives, right? Working in collections, how to most efficiently, but most, what's the word? Balancing efficiency and using, good methods, right? Because 500,000 objects, it's not easy to get through the processing phase, right? I see a lot of people shaking their heads no.
3,000 object cases here, and even then, it's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
how detailed are we? What
Yes.
value?
Right. So what that looks like is, are we going to exactly count the 1,263 sherds in this bag, or are we just going to do a nice estimate and call it good? Are we going to for now, are we going to put every single little piece of data on a data sheet that comes with an object into the database, or are we going to make a bare bones record and leave that detail for later? So just enough so that somebody can find it, know what it is, and know where it came from. So kind of towing that line, I think eternally is the museum professional collections manager's dilemma of we're on a budget, we are on a timeline. What's, what is best for both the objects and our process, right? I feel a lot of kinship in this room, all the nods. I feel very validated. Got another question. Any speculations about using AI in the future for analysis? That's a fascinating question. And one I think that's on a lot of people's minds right now. And I can confidently say I don't know. That's not my area of expertise, really. But yeah, I'm sure there are people on the cutting edge of that, thinking about how we can use AI for archaeology right now. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could
Sure. The question was if there's going to be any residue analysis happening on any of the lithics, the groundstone monos and metates. And there is currently residue analysis being done on the monos and metates. One of Dr. Baxter's colleagues put in a research request for just a representative sample to look for potato starch on the groundstone materials. She's doing a broad survey in all of the Southwest, so it's kind of a meta-analysis, but she wanted to include WS Ranch in that. So if you're interested, her name is Elizabeth Louderbeck. She's at the University of Utah, I believe. So yeah, I haven't heard anything from her as far as results just yet. But yeah, it's happening right now. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so if we don't have any other questions, going once, going twice for those at home.
Oh, there's one more. Jean came back in.
Yep, the site date range. Yeah, sure. So it's 800 to 1300 CE. And as far as dates from the Great Kiva, I don't have the specifics for that. Sorry about that.
I think part of the interest was with the work that Baxter and other people at DMNS have done at Reserve, which is just north of there, also has a contemporaneous Great Kiva site too. So I think that was part of the interest, and it was square, it wasn't rectangle, but yeah, that's maybe, I don't know, miles off the top of my head, 30 minutes north of WS Ranch, so by car, modern.
Yeah. Oh, great. Somebody's a screen printer if I need to make one of the armadillo t-shirts. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Spencer, I am I'll call you up. Oh yeah, I actually I made thank you cards for my volunteers with that the little armadillo that's saying thank you. So he's already out in the world. But yes, I'm very seriously considering making t-shirts out of Oh, somebody asked about cotton textiles. Not that I know of. I don't think I haven't come across any cotton showing up in the botanical analysis, but never say never. That's why we're gonna do a wider sample. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, how does the size of this collection compare with some of the other collections that DMS has?
That's a great question. So like, Amy, how many elements or how many individual bones are you thinking that Jones Miller has?
Oh, 41,000.
41,000. Okay.
So weight, smaller by number, bigger by size, because they're by dimension less bone.
Yes.
But for the archaeology collections, this is by far the biggest.
Yeah.
The GMS is going to house. Magic Mountain is there now. From the years that they dug there, plus the centennial excavations, with still ongoing work with the Harvard excavations coming there, and that's one cabinet. And this is 2 rows of cabinets.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
it's huge.
It puts it in context, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, because you guys know like all the talk about Magic Mountain and all the time spent there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
One cabinet.
Yeah. And also keep in mind, in this collection, we are not storing every little single pottery sherd in its own housing. There are lots, meaning like there's going to be like 500 sherds in one bag that's going to get one object number. So there's a way to make it a little bit more space efficient that way, but it's still about 500,000 individual pieces. So.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
That's good. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much. Great questions. Yeah, that's good. I'll think about the AI one has got me curious. I'll be thinking about that one. But yeah, if anybody would like my contact information to learn more about the site, or if you're interested in starting to volunteer with us, would love to give that out.
And just say your email and somebody, Sean, maybe you can put it in for those at home.
Yeah, so it's Elizabeth.Kriebel, spelled like my last name, at dmns.org. Yes. Yep, that's correct.
Thank you for a very informative way to tackle a big problem. Well, not a problem, but
It can be a problem sometimes. I will not lie to you.
I don't want to call it that.
Yes.
It's more of, it's an opportunity.
Absolutely, an opportunity, yes. With some issues wrapped up just for me to find.
When we have those issues, we just put them in tissues box.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
The rehousing presentations are my favorite.
Mine
You're a
too.
little biased.
Mine
I'm a
too.
little shy.
yeah,
So, but thank you very much. And,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being flexible earlier this evening.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I enjoyed the tacos, so yeah, awesome. Alrighty.
Okay. So,
All right, and thank you everybody on Zoom for